Pretty soon you'll get a chance. So Nona has put together new dates for the site visits to Sela and Wabato. She has 2 options for each place. So if you could just put your name down on every date that you can go, and then she'll sort it out. She's given it a go. Yeah. Which reminds me.
What about the remodel?
And she still has not, she's not getting a response from the people at Madison School. So if anybody knows somebody at Madison School that you can get it in, that'd be great. But she's having a real hard time getting a response from them.
How about calling the superintendent of the school district?
Yeah, the school, I don't know, yeah. So yeah, if you have any ideas about that, contact Nona, and I'm sure she would love help with that, because that's been a real pain. So, okay, just to give you a really quick rundown on the structure of tonight, basically you're going to spend 3 hours, a little bit less, 3 hours looking at options and deciding which ones stay. So in a perfect world, there will be 4 options left standing at the end of this 3 hours. In order to do that, the plan, and you know what happens to the plan. The plan is that there'll be a quick round robin. I requested that you come with the 5 options that you would put at the bottom of your list. This is personally, individually, not with the group. We have the group numbers. That's one set of information. So we'll be doing a group round robin with that, and just saying out the 5 that you think would be the lowest on your list, and we'll just see where that goes. Then we'll have some time after that, and so then we'll see if there are some that everybody has on the bottom 5, then we can do a call for consensus on those and move forward. And then there'll be some time to clarify the numbers, because numbers, and people were thinking lots of different things about the numbers, and I'll go through that a little bit. Also, there are some changes on the costing sheet. I sent that out again also a couple days ago. And that is the numbers that have the options listed and NACS estimates inserted in there. And then the rest of the time will be discussion, variously structured discussion to see what happens when. And there will be a combination of open discussion and round robin. And if the open discussion begins to be dominated by a few voices, we will just go back to round robin, just to be able to handle that. So you can self-monitor your comments in terms of don't stop saying things if you have things to say, but just be aware, just an awareness of how much you're talking compared to other people. So not to put too fine a point on it. So that's it. That's kind of the structure of today. And so first order of business is a consideration call for consensus on the agenda. Do we have a willingness to go forward with the agenda as it is written? Sue Green. Okay, we will go forward with the agenda. And
it's in there.
Did you notice, Dick, that I took your cards out of the envelope to start with?
Thank you. I need all the help I can get.
He does have a green shirt on. We'll take it. Yes.
I have a quick comment. I'm wondering if Victoria would be willing to put an opera together about this evening's.
Yeah. I won't have to do much work beyond what's the material given.
Yeah. TCB, the musical.
I think it should be an operetta. Those end happily. Operas generally end with something.
Okay, yeah, definitely. We want to go operetta, maybe musical.
Yeah.
That works. Okay, those are voices. Okay, so we'll go around around and just call out your 5 lowest. Who would like to start?
Well, I have a question.
Sure.
You, on the sheet that's not the scores, but the one that has A through O, there are several that are already lined out because they're incorporated with another. Is that just for cost estimate?
That's just for cost
Okay,
estimates. We
okay.
want to go for the whole 12
Got it.
that are A, B, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, L, M, N, N. And I did just go see the eye doctor, that's sort of my Yeah, okay. So, any questions before we go around? Actually, I will start with Marlene. She gave me her numbers, or her letters, because she was not able to be here this evening. On her, the 5 bottom on her list were D as in dog, F as in Frank, H, I, and M. So who else would like to go next? Allison?
So I'm telling you the ones I can,
The 5 bottom on your list, like
Okay,
if you never saw them again, you can.
well, I know for sure 4. The I, bare minimum, J, build new site adapted, L, new on capital, I assume that means.
The
Yeah.
south of Capitol.
Yeah. N, unknown,
Did you say L?
L, yeah,
Is one of them.
basically I, J, L, M, all in alphabetical order, and probably D, but I'm undecided because, yeah, I'm undecided on.
Do you want an extra minute?
B,
B as in
O
boy.
as bid, I'm worried about the costs. No, acquiring property. So that's fair, oh, and D, Walker.
Okay, so if you're not sure about B, I'll go ahead
Yeah,
with D,
okay,
because
so just
I heard
D.
more certainty there.
D, I, J, L, M.
Okay, and Dick?
Well, it's great, you record these and so they'll put them up, so then everybody can see what the final tally is.
We'll see. Just, yeah,
Well, I guess I can tell you my lowest one,
your lowest ones, your 5 lowest ones, the 5 you want to drop off the list.
B, D,
B,
F.
D, let's see. Okay.
B, D, F, G, H, J, L, M. I
Okay.
can put
W
the,
left?
So 5, what are your 5 lowest?
well, that's good, I can't count.
Okay, you can't. So B, D, F, G, H, I, what?
J, and M.
Okey doke. We'll make it
L,
work.
M.
Okay, Steve. Okay, Joanne.
Okay. D, G, H, I, and M.
Okay. Steve.
My 5 are the 5 lowest in bondability, so that's D, I, J, L, M.
Okay. Thanks. Who else would like to go? Jimmy?
D, H, I, J, M.
Okay. Mike?
D, F, G, H, I.
Okay. Michelle?
D, H, I, J, M.
Okay. Did I hear some- Dorothy?
A, B,
Okay, hold on just a sec. A, B?
D as in, A D as in dog.
Okay.
A, B, I, L, M, N.
Okay. Audrey?
D, E, H, I, M.
H-I-M?
L.
L. Okay. Scott?
D, F, I, L, M.
Okay. had Jen,
Sorry.
that's okay. Bruce, Jen, okay, Lauren.
A, D, as in dog, J, M, N.
Okay. A. Bruce, Meg, Molly, and Tor. Yeah, jump.
Okay, so, B, D,
B, D.
B, D,
Oh, D. Okay, don't.
I, J, I don't know what.
You should have a sheet that has
I didn't-
all the options.
And I didn't think it. So it's L, let me just,
L. Okay. So B, D, I, J, and L. Tor.
Yep. D, H, I, J, M.
M is in man.
Yes.
Okay. Jen?
A, D as in dog, F, I, L.
Okay.
They're not in the right order. So
M?
M, D,
Did you use a word I'm not hearing?
we'll do it, phone number. D, he's a boy. Dog, G, okay. Did I say J and G?
You did not say J yet. So what I have for you is B as in boy, D as in dog, G as in good, J, and M. Okay. And Molly.
D,
D, I,
J, M,
M. Okay. And Paul will be late. We don't have these projected yet because we didn't know yet what it was going to be. So Paul said he would go with the consensus. So everyone except Paul, and he will add that for him, has D as in dog. That would be the Walker plan on their lowest 5. So is there consensus for dropping that option? And why is that option being dropped? Why is that on your lowest list? Just okay, too costly, doesn't maintain 6.8.
Based on the criterion score, it's the lowest scoring.
And we'll talk about the scores of those, but yeah. Right now, we're just looking for other reasons. Okay, so congratulations. That's another option off. D is now done. D is for done. Okay, no others have all, does everybody have on their lowest list? The 2 next are I and M as in man. Okay, so I was hoping for a couple more, but one will do. We'll
Well, I always got over 10.
Can we still ask for consensus on
Yes,
this?
we may. Oh, yes, we may. So there would be, so I, which is the bare minimum. Call for consensus to drop I, which is bare minimum, Okay. We got that. And tell me why, or tell us why, so we have the official, why is I not?
It doesn't meet our program needs, and it's not very cheap. Safety and security, all the rest.
Okay, program needs, safety, security,
It won't last long.
okay. Okay, longevity. Okay, and it's expensive for what you get, is that what you're hearing, Allison? Okay. And, yes, Jim?
It's really the bare minimum, as the language speaks to it in the description.
So generally, all around, not enough. Okay. Cool. Okay. And then the next one, there are two, let's see. M, which is new at an unknown site. You want to call for consensus for that? Yes, please. Okay. So we have Dorothy said.
I was reading, that was blue though.
Okay, we have two blues, that's fine. And what was yours?
Green.
Okay, so we have two blues and the rest were green, and that is option M. And because it is,
I'm sorry, I meant green.
oh, you meant green? Okay. Did you mean green, blue? Did you mean blue? Okay, cool, that's fine. Neutral is.
That's safe to bet.
Okay, right. It's totally legal, that's why it's there. Okay, so why option M? Tell me why. Why no option M? Tori.
Too many unknowns.
The only reason I was blue was in case we reached an impasse, it might be a good choice.
Okay.
Except it sounds like you have to buy the property.
Well, it sounds like you'd have to decide where it's going to be. That's why it's all unknown.
So option M is, there's consensus that option M comes off the list because there are too many unknowns. Do you have another comment?
It's an absolute unknown. We don't know how much, we don't know where it is, so there's no way to know the cost involved in building where we don't know where it's going to be.
Okay, cool. Okay.
Why go looking for a site when you've already got the site?
I also feel that the bondability is low on that because most of the public want to know where, what and where we want to build.
Absolutely.
Okay, now we're good. Yes, that's 3. We're down to single digits, you guys. Congratulations. Okay, so the next one, in terms of the numbers, and this is probably, well, we'll see. J is the other one with the highest number. That's new site adapted, that is using another school's design on the Mo Nesbitt property. I'm going to call for consensus. Remember that if you do not agree, it's okay to raise an orange or a red. And you will have a chance to speak to that.
Is this the color for J?
This is J, that is build new, site adapted on the Mo Nesbitt property. Okay, so we have, and Dorothy, yours is? Okay, yeah, I'm slow, you gotta keep things up for me. Okay, so we have Jay and Jen and Scott. You had orange cards, and Joanne, you had a blue. So Jen and Scott, you may speak to your orange. Now, just to remind people, and to remind people in the observer section, orange, the color orange means that these people do not agree, but they're not willing to block consensus. So they have an opportunity to speak to their orange. So.
I understand the concerns that people have. I just know on the cost basis, the site adapt actually wipes out all the cost of the purchase of the land. The savings on building a building that is already built. And that is a difficult one to prove because a lot of it's in the construction costs.
Okay. Jen?
I'm not married to the idea, but I think that if we leave Mo Nesbitt on there, we should leave the option to consider decided adapted plan for the building. What's that?
Putting it somewhere else, you mean?
Right. Wait,
No, she said.
no, I mean, build a,
She said delete B on site that should be part of it.
oh, right, because if
Okay.
we're, yeah,
If
if
Mo
we're
Nesbitt's
considering Mo
doing it.
Nesbitt, I think we should, yeah. But I won't block it.
Okay, okay, great. And then, a few comments from the rest of you in terms of why you would like it off the list, or why it is now off the list, consensus has been reached. Joanne?
I'm neutral because I think the biggest obstacle I see with this plan is the negative publicity of the eminent domain of this Nesbitt site. So I would feel the same for B also. I don't necessarily need to rule out the site adapted plan. So I feel the same for B as I do for J.
Okay, anybody else? Steve?
My group and I also have real problems with the eminent domain part of that plan.
Okay, and Michelle?
Just speaking to the site adapted piece, I think that one of the factors that is not quantifiable because we don't really have a plan that we would be, for sure that we'd be adapting, is finding a school that has a close enough program that it wouldn't be just constant change orders. We've talked about the Cheney middle schools quite a bit, and they're designed around grade level teams, which is not at all what we do. And so I think that that's a huge unknown in terms of what would the actual plan be that we would be adapting, and how much work would it take to actually get that to what we would need.
So the problem with finding a school with a close enough plan, and that there would be the potential for a lot of change orders. Okay? And Bruce, I believe you were, greens, just to let you know, greens are, in response to a yellow, which we don't have. Okay, so, and then I lost track of how many people, and Allison. Yeah, you'll get it down right about the time we're done. You can take it out.
Your wife and car.
Okay, so Bruce, Mike, Allison, Jimmy, and Molly. Bruce?
I think we should acknowledge the work that Scott and the group have done to get this in front of us, because it's been a good discussion. But I also feel that we have to acknowledge that the architect in particular, not just NAC, but the others who have presented, have not indicated that the cost savings that we had originally projected would be there at the site adapt. And for me, then why do site adapt? Because fundamentally, you're adapting and building a school to your program needs, as Michelle's pointing out, which is really what we need to accomplish.
And Mike?
Past history is showing that site adapt tends not to work. Our 1955 high school was a site adapt plan. We shared that plan with Tumwater School District, West Valley Yakima, and I believe one of the Spokane schools, but I can't remember that one. Tumwater, West Valley, and Ellensburg have all gotten rid of those previous plans because they were terrible to do.
Okay, so site adapt tends not to work. For example, the 55 high school, is that the one that's just been replaced? Okay, so, Allison.
Bruce said exactly what I was going to say, the cost savings is not enough to sway me to use that.
Okay, Jimmy?
Our small group is very much concerned and opposed to, our small group was very much concerned and opposed to the eminent domain. We also understand that the Cheney School plan does not have sufficient consideration of the performing arts programs. And we understand that the Mo Nesbitt property would cost in addition another $2.5 million to purchase that property.
So the additional money as well. So the additional money as well. Okay. Okay. And Molly, did you have comments?
I did, but I'm wondering if mine isn't about the site adaptation, as mentioned is about that. And so I'm
Eminent.
maybe we should wait about that. I'm interested in that.
Okay, okay. So, Steve?
I'd like to echo what Bruce said, Scott, about appreciating the amount of work you guys put into it. That's what makes the world go round, is when people get over their idea and work it. So, thank you.
Yay.
And as long as we're saying thank yous, I'd like to thank Robert Walker for bringing up an idea that at least made us all think differently as well.
Yeah, let the record show. Okay. Okay, so at this point, yes, Meg?
If I took notes, I mean, I had L also had the same number of checks as J.
Yeah.
And so
Well, let's see.
I might not, I don't
I have two fewer for L. But, so we've gotten the ones that have the most, but as Meg has pointed out, there are also 8 that were on the bottom for L and
I have 9 for L and 9 for
8.
J.
And 8 for H. Say what?
H.
H. So,
I would
yes, Dick.
suggest we just keep going if there is.
Until we reach one that
Well, we're in the mood for action, let's keep it going.
We're
Yeah.
swinging, so let's keep swinging.
Okay, Molly.
I think we need to talk about these numbers before we start. I think some of the numbers are very skewed. And there are groups that shouldn't vote on things, and I just think it's fine to get a consensus on what we're agreeing with, but I think that at some point we need to get to the meat of some of these numbers.
So basically, the process that we just went through was the low-hanging fruit process. That is where people, have pretty distinct feelings about things. When it gets down to, as Molly was saying, when it starts getting down to the lower numbers, then it's time to have more discussion about these things. While orange cards don't block consensus, to me, they are a warning. So, to watch out,
Can we take ones off of there that are gone so that we can, we're not muddying the waters with things that are.
sure.
We have the technology.
Yes, and we have the technologist.
The answer is.
Yeah. And see, now there'll be room to write down the options, the full name option, and the spell thinning right. Okay, Steve pointed out I did spell thinning wrong. It was late. I'm a late person. Yeah, well, thinning is really kind of unusual.
I don't want to believe it.
Yeah. D is in dog.
Yeah.
I. M is in man. Yes, that one. And J. You said yes, okay. So, good job, you guys. So, Paul, you said you'd go with everybody, so there are 4 that are gone. Option D, which is the water plan, and I know you really like that one. Option I, which is just barely do anything. Option M, and option J. M is in M and J. So, down to 8. Yay. Okay, so that happened fast. So I would like, before we start talking about those numbers, to give you a little bit of context about it. First of all, I want to caution you. Numbers seem magic, especially numbers in a grid like that. It looks a lot like science. And yes, there is something to be done with this. Yes, there were calculations. Those calculations were valid to a point. The process of this get people talking, to get people focused on each criterion for each option. And then to have consensus, to find consensus around that and to talk and learn from each other as well. So perhaps that's the primary reason for doing this, but the numbers are important. But what this has done is momentarily simplify. Because remember the tangle with 14 options, a bunch of criteria, at times I think it ended up with 14, and 18 people. That's, there's probably some mathematical thing about that, but all I know is that it was a tangle. So this process that started with you all in your small groups scoring each option for each criterion, then was summarized in a series of steps to come up with this. So that helps simplify. Now it's time to start adding the complexity back in. Like what comes behind this? And what were the problems that groups found? I sat in on 2 groups over the last 2 weeks, and there were some significant problems with these things, which I would have expected with some of them. And then one of them I didn't expect. So these numbers are not to be taken as is. So, and I would also invite the observers to not take these numbers as is either, because the groups went through processes that involved a lot of assumptions. So one of the things that needs to happen now is to go back and talk about some of those assumptions, where they were, made, how different the groups were. This is not the end point. We are still very much in the middle, a little bit less in the middle than we were half an hour ago, so yay. But we still have the messy bits to go, really. The only way out of this process is through the middle of it. Some problems that the groups came up with in scoring that I found, the biggest problems were, of course, with H, as in Henry, too ambiguous to score. There's really no plan. Was it the Bassetti plan? And what was the Bassetti plan again? Was kind of what I heard. And then there was also the NAC plan, and which NAC plan? So, too ambiguous to score. Yes?
I just want to say that my team gave that all 0s, but it was for the same reason.
Yeah,
So I just-
And there was one group that didn't even score it, who said it's too ambiguous, we're not even going to do this. So please ignore all of H, basically. That just drops those numbers out. So another one, across, there were several problems with the criteria themselves. One was use of existing site was very interesting to me because it was basically bimodal. It depended totally on your assumptions, including your assumptions about how you would score. So that you had a 0 meant either it doesn't deal with what to do with Morgan Middle School, or it doesn't allow a community center or other uses of the building. So we got that. Or 4 deals with Morgan. It's like, okay, we've taken care of that. We don't have to worry about what to do with Morgan. Or it gets a 4 because it's built someplace else, and so it allows a community center to go there. So you can see some of the problems with this when you start going back into it. So use of existing site was a bit of a problem. Too many pieces of paper. Other criteria that I saw or watched in the comments that came through with those sheets, role in the long-term plan, because there really isn't a specific long-term plan that the school district has, clearly delineated. It's sort of hard to know whether that fits. Location amenities, what exactly does that mean? Is it because it's close to the downtown, or because it's close to the other 2 schools? Environmental impacts, there was a lot of question about that. Also questions about transportation, and then the difference between bondability and community understanding. So those things are not necessarily all that important, except if you see where some of these numbers would fall out, because you come up with a number, but really what does that number mean? So The best thing about this is that, now that we've gotten as it were, the low-hanging fruit down, that it shows the importance of assumptions and getting clear about assumptions as we move forward. Yes, Dorothy?
My question was life expectancy. If you're looking at the old Morgan, it's been there for 8 years. And does that mean life expectancy, whether it lasts 80 years, or you're talking about what's done to it, how whether it will be appropriate in 30 years or 80 years? That to me needs to be clarified.
So that's another clarification that needs to happen. Yeah. Okay. And Jimmy, you had a question?
Question of clarification. I don't believe we ever talked about the top highest floor.
No, we didn't.
Did you intend not to do that?
Why don't you think about it? We'll deal with that later. And the reason, I don't want to be all mysterious about that. It's very straightforward. The reason to not do that at this point is that it's very close to, it could get us at this point with 8 options to a point where we would whittle down too much in terms of it tends to be easier to see what we don't want than to come up with what we do want. So, but yes, that will be addressed, hopefully, as we go forward. So now, and there were a couple changes to the costing sheet, which I'll maybe wait until we get down to that. I made some changes. The one that you just got from me a few days ago is the one that has things corrected. Some of the corrections were thanks to Meg, who said, no, that does include demolition costs, or, yes, it does include demolition costs, or no, it doesn't. So, so we can go through that later. So what we're going to do in the next 2 hours is toggle between the big picture, that is standing back and looking at how these things work, and then drilling down into the details. And part of drilling down into the details is what questions specifically does this group need answered in order to move forward. Okay. So some of those can be answered tonight, some of them will have to wait and be answered in 2 weeks when lots of consultants come to answer questions. So we're going to be moving right now into discussion of the remaining options or the criteria, whichever you would like to do. And just to remind you, this is kind of where the rubber hits the road. There will be probably some high emotions that come up. That's okay. Look for yourself in terms of when you're feeling agitated, why are you agitated, and and look into that, and remember with the rest of you, look underneath. Why might somebody be really strong about another thing? Why do you love or hate Morgan Middle School as it is now? Why do you think that a teammate holds the opinion that they do? What's the underlying interest in there? Is it cost? Is it, there may be a problem with, okay, I've been really strong about this one. How can I back down now? What will people think of me? That's an okay reason. It's very human. And we're on tape, and we've got, observers, all sorts of, strange things going on. Okay, so I'm seeing a card. You had a question.
Just question of clarification. Is it possible to clarify H?
Well, yes, the answer would be yes. In terms of how, that's open for discussion. Yeah.
Well, I think, if I remember it correctly, that I was the one that actually suggested that go up, not realizing that it really is the same thing as F. Because all of those mixed plans don't. Oh, okay. I thought that's what I meant when I said.
In a word, H is remodel plus new. Some remodel and some new, and doesn't really say.
And what after that got brought up, and people said, well, renovating would include adding space. I think that's my recollection of it, but.
Yeah, but I think H is.
Okay, H is adding on.
Yeah, my understanding was that H is adding on and
There's some.
F was
Correct, but there's.
just renovate, what's there. Okay, Joanne?
Tom said that F included 10,000 square feet extra lease space.
Yeah, but H is, since we don't know what it is, we don't know what it would do exactly, but it would probably tear down one part or the other.
Kind of a G&H referred to close together too.
Okay, can we use the
Yeah.
cards, please? Steve?
I was on the group with Michelle, and we did not score this option because of the vagueness. Now I have the Bassetti report open in front of me here. It's 20 pages long, quite a lot of work went into this option. I think, especially given the confusion around option H, maybe reacquainting ourselves with the Bassetti plan would be a good idea.
Okay, so reacquainting with Bassetti. And Mike, you have a question?
I guess I am still unclear. F does not in any way, shape, or form say that it includes any additional space. It says remodel all buildings. And I believe that was what we based our decisions on. And for 28.5 mil, I would be very surprised if that included any additional space.
Okay, so you have an answer to that question? Clarification?
It was in his detailed information about his cost estimate that he had on the board, and I asked him about it at the last meeting. I don't know if it was in between, during break time, but he said there was 10,000 square feet extra because renovating everything didn't provide the amount of square footage necessary to make it go.
Okay, so that was unclear, so then the numbers that came from this, again, are going to be unclear. Tor, you have another question?
Yeah, I don't disagree with Steve. I'm just wondering then, are we going to define H as the Bassetti? Because to me, the killer flaw in H is really, to me right now, looks like H, X, Y, and Z. You have 4 or whatever, other mix. It sounds like multiple options in one category, right? My little tenor brain is kind of very confusing. So if we're going to call it the Bassetti option, then that's different. That's more clarifying.
Okay. So what I'm writing down here is, what we need moving forward, either tonight or in the board.
Right.
So that what I have written down is to clarify option H, multiple options, or just Bassetti, so there could be an H1, H2.
Well, and I would be opposed to multiple.
You would be opposed to
Multiple in one category, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So it would be broken out into more
Right.
than, yeah, okay. And so Lauren and then, is it a question of clarification?
It is kind of a clarification of what further information.
Okay.
I think it's more of a statement, but it seems like we need, one is we had the presentation from Max, and I think maybe we were going to get some screenshots that we could look at again, because I don't have
I sent them.
all those together.
I can resend
And then
them.
for next time, something written out that will be comparable, that we would need to actually substantively discuss. There's one study, some other mixed one, and getting those all together seems essential to actually know what we're looking at. Right?
Okay, so that was,
Like,
yeah, and so what I've got down is that's also clarifying option H. Also, Jeff, one of the things that I sent you yesterday was the NAC PowerPoint. So we can pull that up if people have questions about the costing. And Molly, you had a
Well,
question?
that was my question. There was, didn't NAC do a remodel with taking out old, adding new, very much like the city? It did have something like that.
So there should be, I guess my question, so that.
G2.
Well, that's kind of, I guess, I think that's my question too. It seems like, for the purpose, we're not recommending a plan. I mean, we're not recommending a design, correct? When we write a recommendation for, we're not saying just like we said, or just like Nat presented. So,
Does anybody have a clarification, somebody that knows the answer to that? You know the answer to that?
Not if I have anything
Okay, that would be a blue. Yes?
What about, yeah, if you have a comment about it, I don't know if I have an authoritative answer.
Okay, for right now, we're looking for an authoritative answer if we can find one.
because
Which is
if
the
that's,
question.
could you repeat the question, please? Is it the scope of our role here as a committee, as a team, to actually determine the design of the recommendation going forward? And the reason I'm asking that is, if it's not, if that's not within the scope of our charge, then what we're talking about with F and H, it's the same thing.
Okay, so
Why is renovating and adding 10,000 feet different than renovating and adding an unknown amount of feet, square feet?
Okay, so does somebody have an answer to that now?
Well, let's see if all of my answers are the same, but my answer would be, we're not charged with recommending specific design, but we're charged with recommending a concept. And I think the concept of H is different from the concept of F, in the sense that F seeks to remodel everything that's there and in order to avoid tearing anything down. And it adds a little bit because what's there isn't sufficient. In other words, it replaces the portables, basically. So the concept is, don't tear anything down in the portables, whereas the concept for H is a more significant renovation and probably replacement of whatever you don't like, which could be G, you don't like the old, and H, you don't like the new. So they're different concepts. It's not a renovation. And so, and then we need a more specific plan in order to assess those options. I think right now we can't really see the differences very well.
Okay, Paul, you had an answer?
I agree with her recommending the concept, not necessarily build.
Okay. Any other comments? Did you have an answer?
Yeah,
A
it's just a
comment?
matter of logic that I think that we would have to have some concept or design, whichever word you prefer, in order to think about something like whether it meets program needs. So we are de facto evaluating what I would call aspects of design, but I don't care what we call it. I just think in fact we are actually have to be doing that. Because those are the major criteria for deciding what's preferable.
But what,
Okay, so Steve, did you still have a comment?
Yeah, my comment is, first of all, an example from my group's discussion. When we were talking about F, renovate all of Morgan, we actually sent in 2 different scores for program needs. And we said, if it really is simply remodeling Morgan, we gave you 2 in terms of meeting program needs. And if we're going to add space for program needs, then we would give it 4. By the way, we gave no scenario where we score higher than 4 in program needs. And I'd just like to repeat what I said earlier about, I think we need to reacquaint ourselves with some of these other ideas that, like Scott's, have had a lot of work put into them, but maybe they're a little fuzzy for us, me anyway, right now.
Dick, was that a comment card? Are you sure?
I'm thinking about making a comment.
You thinking about making, anybody else thinking about making a comment?
Just, well, 2 things. I guess I hear what Meg's saying. I think that's how I approach it, or at least that is my concept. That with H, I would suggest that we would turn that, if we want to keep that, is turn that back to NAC and let them come up with a design in the next 2 weeks and say, okay, here's the concept that for you to consider.
Was it,
Because right now,
could you say it louder, Dick?
well, if the group wants to keep H, is unsure about it, then I would suggest to the group is that we keep it on the list and that we ask NAC to put a concept together for consideration, given the criteria and all the other discussions here tonight, and present that at the next meeting so you have something concrete to evaluate in relation to the criteria. But with that said, I guess my only comment is about A, L, and N. Now, I say that now because I want to, and the fact that I guess in our small group, there's a lot of commonalities, and when we went through those, especially with new construction, the variable with location. So I think Scott and Lauren can correct me, but we gave pretty much the same score. There were only 1 or 2 variables that had different scores. I would suggest that some of these things are a little bit easier, at least in my mind, to eliminate than others, or at least further discussion. That's A, L, and N. And my suggestion is that they should all be the same, at least in scoring. And the variable is the safety and security is on one, maybe size, location, organization is the other. And I think we could probably eliminate that if we discuss those 3 in the context.
So you're suggesting, Dick, that we consider, that we start our discussion with discussing option
Well,
A,
my
L, and N?
my A and L and N were pretty much the same, and I guess the scoring wise, and then out of those 3, I certainly got different opinions about new construction on Capitol or new construction on Finning or on the high school side. I mean, they should be about the same. They should be still pretty much the same. Other than on Capitol, that's the same issues.
Okay, so
Discussion.
Okay, so you're suggesting that when we get to a more specific discussion, that we start with comparing A, L, and N together. Molly, you had a yellow, and what question are you answering?
No, it's a comment.
Okay, blue, please.
Blue?
Molly, you have a question?
My question is a question of clarification for Dick, and that is, you're saying all the, is that what I need to do?
Yeah, exactly.
So all of yours are new construction, except you have not added the Moen Nesbitt property. So I would, are you eliminating that just?
Well, I thought Moen Nesbitt was eliminated, so that's why.
Option B, that is new with the new design on Moen Nesbitt property, is still on the table.
Excuse me, A, B, L, and N.
Okay, so when we get to that point, and I would like to hold that in the corner in the parking lot until we do that, so we are not discussing that yet. Let's get the rest of the questions. Are you done with your question, or with your comment? You had a, I thought you had a blue. Okay, Michelle, you had
Well,
a,
I think mine might be a parking lot conversation now, but
Okay.
can I get it on, just so we don't forget?
sure.
Well, I think that B is a little bit different than some of the other new, because I heard at least 3 different groups say that they really don't want to recommend eminent domain as a factor. And so if that is a consensus, it seems like that should just come off the table altogether.
Okay, so you would recommend a call for consensus on option B. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, that's sort of what I would, yes.
Okay, okay. And so I've got that on the parking lot. And Tor and then Mike.
Yeah, I just want to second what Dick said. I think that makes kind of sense.
Okay, okay, so it sounds like that's the way we're gonna go. Mike?
Just as a slight point of clarification, I think it kind of echoes what Michelle and Dick are both saying, but in essence, I think what Dick was trying to say was A, L, and N are all new construction on existing properties. So in some ways, those could be lumped together. Whereas B, I don't think we take out of consideration yet, that's new construction on a non-existing property. And so that should be a separate discussion. But new on existing property theoretically should be the same discussion.
So I'm hearing that we, yeah, Audrey? Audrey?
I'd just like to discuss B more before we call the consensus.
Okay, so, any other comments at the moment? Okay, so it sounds like we have a combination, either discussing A, L, and N together, with B or without B. I would like to do a round robin here and just, anybody that, wants to speak to any of that, I would, let's just put them all together at the moment because they're kind of mixed up. And so what do you think about those ideas? What do you think about any of those options? What do you think about eminent domain, etc.? Dorothy, would you like to start? Okay. Who would like to start? Tor.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say about eminent domain that I totally get that it may be a tax advantage to the Mo Nesbitt owners, but I think the ability to make the community understand that, I didn't want that idea to go away, that it is an advantage to them. But they're not allowed to come out publicly and say, yeah, we robbed you, took it away from us, so we sold it, right? So I think the community is still gonna view it as an action of taking, and I would just say that, yeah, that would be a big problem, because there are just gonna be some people who have a knee-jerk reaction to the idea, even though it's a well-established law, to the idea.
Okay. And we're going to do a round robin this time so that everybody will get a chance to speak on this. Audrey, would you like to speak on this?
Personally, I think the B property at least is the best property we have available if we can get it first. Because it's so big, allowing them to grow between near the other schools. A lot of factors, and although I don't like eminent domain more than anyone else, I think it might be worth it to get that property.
So I'm going to say, can we continue on then about option B? It seems like eminent domain is up there, and I've got A, L, and N in the parking lot as well. Dorothy?
Our family had eminent domain use on it, and I don't like it. A lot of people don't like it, as Audrey said. I think you're gonna have the price of the land, you're gonna have the price of a new school, and unknown, there are groundwater problems, obviously. They hit them when they built the high school. They've hit them other times. And I think, if nothing else, if they already own the land, they wouldn't be paying for other land as well as what is needed to settle the groundwater issues before they went into building another school. I think that it would be easier to pass a bond if it was on land that was already owned. What I'm saying, I'm not sure good, but
Thanks. Dick?
Well, I don't really have an opinion.
You don't have an opinion? Oh,
That's
all right.
No, I agree with Audrey. I think of all the properties that are discussed, and even the unknowns, it's probably the best property that we have, or at least for the schools. The school would give the location. And the groundwater issues, I think that's pretty well known and validated, at least with the construction of the high school, and 1,000 feet ain't gonna make that much of a difference, I suspect, in the substructure. The issue that I have with eminent domain is, and about the whole proposal is eminent domain. I think that even though the attorney that came to talk about eminent domain from Seattle says, yes, we do use that on the west side in Seattle. Well, we're not Seattle. And that may be an option, that may be a tactic used in Seattle, but I think that given that in eastern Washington, and particularly in Ellensburg, that eminent domain, given the conservative nature of the community, voting communities, would be probably not widely accepted, number one. Number two is that I think that the school board, the school district that uses eminent domain it's not a one-shot deal in the fact that the school district still relies on levies that have to go to elections every 2 years, and people have a long memory, especially if they're in disagreement with the district. So I think, I can't speak on behalf of the board, but I suspect that the board would have real reluctance if we move forward with the recommendation of eminent domain. And I guess the other thing is that the board has made offers since 2000, early 2000, about that property has been rebuffed. And after the 14th no, and then I guess you gotta give up. But, you know, if there was a chance that that would be sold with a willing seller and a willing buyer, and that should change my opinion. I would like to see that one be pursued, but that's not the case. So I guess that's where I'm at. The only other thing is that if you remember when the attorney was here, is that eminent domain, it could be a 4-month to 2-year process, depends on if the property owner is contesting the court. So it's a time factor, it's an expense factor, and it's a political factor, and it kind of just takes that property out of the picture.
I think just the, I mean, there are a range of issues that even if we were to proceed with it, I'm not clear in talking to folks in the community that there is support within the family to be a willing partner in which we blows the whole timeline out.
Could you speak
I'm
up?
sorry.
There's
I
support
acknowledge
there
that.
in the family?
Yeah, yeah. It's not clear to me in some conversations that I've had after being identified with this process that there is unanimity within the family groups, which was one of the pieces that the attorney spoke to. And so there's a concern. I have a kind of this huge, kind of almost gut issue that it really sticks in my craw that we would be creating private tax benefit by asking the public to support that effort. It's just phenomenal to me. In some ways, we could be, I think, be successful with, if you chose to do eminent domain and be successful, and still create a residual ill will on carry forward because of how you have manipulated the tax structure to a specific individual or set of individuals' benefit, really in certain ways to the detriment of all other taxpayers, because you are asking all of them to then shoulder that burden. That's a bit of an issue for me. That's good.
Allison?
I agree completely that I'm not comfortable with giving a big tax break to, when we rely on taxes to pay for schools. And the other thing, I don't know real estate, but 2.5 million for maybe the 20 acres we need seems like a pretty high price tag. But I think it may be a waste of money, or too much money.
Scott?
Building on existing land sounds really cool, but you gotta remember, you're building and taking away things that are in use now. Bus barns, softball fields, things like that. You're gonna take them away, and what are you gonna do with them? You're putting, the state of Washington says if you're gonna build a middle school, you should plan on 20 acres. The reason why they say that is they want it to be a self-contained unit for their programs. Well, in the efforts of saving money, we're trying to share all these things with other facilities, and that sounds really good, but there's problems associated with sharing them all the time. There's no question that the Moa-Nesbitt is the best location. The balancing act you have to decide, and I know this is not going to change anyone's opinion, is it enough to go to the negative of eminent domain?
I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that the location is ideal. I will have a really hard time knowing that that's how we got that, whereas if the choice was made to build on the Fenning side of Valley View and that property became available at some other point, it could be purchased and still expand there. But I think I'm with Dick that the long-term political loss to get that property seems like, we can't live with double levy failures. And if that left a bad taste in the community's mouth, I think we would face that. And that's beyond just having a building that's not adequate, that's not having staffing to teach the kids, so. Thoughts?
I agree with a lot of what's been said, and it seems like we're illustrating ourselves that the ambiguity that could be created in the community and the misunderstandings and all the talk that is going to go toward the issues when people are trying to understand about eminent domain, there's several other things people have mentioned, and under the circumstances of the great need that we have in the community for a school, for a middle school, we can't afford to let that public comment get so mixed up. I think people would be understandably confused, and we shouldn't, I couldn't in good conscience try to even go there, but considering everything, all the needs there are.
Hands down, best property. I mean, it'd be so nice to have 15, 20 acres up in that east corner, right along Penny. That's simply what was proposed when we actually made an offer on that property, was up 15 acres up in that corner. That is appraised, but, the owners did not want to sell.
How long ago was that?
Right before the last 4 years ago. 4 years ago. Yeah.
You remember how much it was appraised for?
It was appraised at 50,000 an acre. So we offered 750,000 for 15 acres, and it was turned down. So I agree. I don't think, to me, taking people's land from them is not the way to go. We're looking 80 years down the road. And, it's really one of the things that I really look at is, is one of the reasons why we purchased the property across from Valley View. Because 20, 30 years from now, we're going to be landlocked at the high school. It will be developed in that area. There were a number of, I think, over 20 plus housing sites at the piece of property that we purchased. But the idea is we need ball fields. We're playing soccer on Mountain View. And so we purchased that land. And so that, because we know we're going to be landlocked. If in 1929, if there were 20 acres that were purchased for Morgan Middle School, we wouldn't be having this debate or this discussion. It'd be right where it's at. Part of it is just, not that important.
Well, I agree with everyone that I think the Mount Nesbitt property is the best property also, and I think that the groundwater issues can be dealt with if they're designed for that early. But again, I have the same issues with the eminent domain and the negative PR. I wish that the property owners would sell 15 acres to us, although I still worry that the community may be upset at us having to buy more property to do this project. There was concern over the last property purchase on the other side of Capitol, so I worry about that also. So on the other topic about combining AL and I think. Oh, okay. Yeah.
So in addition to the serious concern about using eminent domain, I want to add to what Bruce and Allison said, that the irony of basically either committing or abetting tax evasion in converting that land from open space land to land that has something built on it in the service of a project that is funded by property tax payments is just more than I can handle. That's just too ironic. On the other hand, every other person who's spoken so far has talked about what a perfect location that is. So, since we've all been hearing from the public about this project as we go along, maybe we should keep it on the list at least until the next meeting and see if maybe we're not miscalculating about how people would feel about the eminent domain thing. I'm personally against the eminent domain idea, but maybe the public, given what a perfect location the Mount Nesbitt property is, maybe they would feel differently. I don't know.
Can I make a comment of clarification?
If you could hold it for a moment until we get all the way around.
You know, same feelings about the property being the best of the location. It was one of the only sixes that we gave in our grade detailing that was actually exceeding expectations of what they would hope to do. I guess I understand everyone's concern about eminent domain, but I also know that, well, in our town, sometimes things get blown out of proportion, and I think maybe we're shocked now at this point because of 4 levy failures, and that maybe we're being a little short-sighted on what the population can understand. I think that it can be put in a way that growth is going to encroach on that property. So it's either going to be, you know, a school, or it's going to be a development with 40 to 50 houses on it. So now we've got a traffic issue and all the other things. So I'm not advocating for it, but I'm definitely saying I don't think we should take it off the list. And I think that if we went around this room and everyone acknowledged that it was a good piece of, one of the better pieces of property, that perhaps I may be an optimist, but maybe something good will happen.
I have no qualms about standing up on that stage and saying that piece of property is not worth what we would have to go through and what the community would go through if we said, let's spend $2.5 million to buy that piece of property because it's the best piece of property in the world to build a new school on. It's the best piece of property in the world that we should spend public dollars for and get it by using eminent domain, taking people's money by using public taxpayer dollars to buy it, spending taxpayer money, and therefore we would use those dollars to buy money to build a new school, and then sit here around the table and say, oh, we had to do that because the public, oh, we have to keep it on the table because the public is willing. We may be wrong. We think the public would support us keeping that piece of property on the table so we can buy it. It's going to be landlocked. We need to buy that piece of property. Come on, folks, open your eyes. That will not work. I can tell you right now, the public will not buy that.
I agree with everything everybody said. Some, I didn't realize people thought it is a wonderful piece of property, but I am quite a skeptic about the 20-acre standard, which is really not 20, but now we're talking about 800 students. It's even less than that. That the state would specify, but the state itself acknowledges that that's a rule of thumb, that it is inconsistent with other policy about environmental sensitivity and green building and reducing carbon impacts and all of that. So I'm not looking for a great big piece of property myself, personally. I mean, I don't think the school district should be either. The other thing I would say is I would like to keep site adaptation on the table, which it wouldn't be with the
items that we eliminated at the end.
So I'd like it to somehow be. So, this is sort of the only thing I have to add.
Okay, Mike?
It's a little bit difficult to be this far down the road here. As far as groundwater is concerned, every single piece of property in Kidderminster County is going to have a groundwater issue because we have high groundwater. It's very mitigatable, so long as they know in advance. And the problem was going with the lowest responsible bidder. When we built the high school, they didn't know in advance because they may not have been qualified to do that. Moving on. The Mo Nesbitt property, I love in that it gives the middle school its own space. Our poor Morgan kids have been squished onto a postage stamp for many, many years. They go and travel to other schools. Every single school in central Washington sits on a large, expansive piece of property. Some shared with other buildings, but nonetheless, large, expansive pieces of property. When I think of schools that are built up on little tiny pieces of property, I think of New York City, and we are not New York City. We are a rural community with open space available. Environmentally, I believe that schools are very good uses of green space because we become green space. 20 acres will build a whole bunch of houses. 20 acres of the school means you have one building and lots of green space, park space for the community to use, which I very much like. All that said, I believe the Mo Nesbitt property is the second best piece of property in Kidderminster County. I don't wish to muddy the waters, but there is a very nice 16-acre piece of property at about 20th and Water that pretty much backs up to the Mount Stewart property across the John Wayne Trail. That puts us in the north part of the community, which is where most of the building is going on and is in growth, and also gives the middle school its own space. So I think there is another opportunity out there as well.
Jen?
I agree. I'm last to go, so I agree with a lot of what's been said. I agree first and foremost that I think eminent domain will muddy the waters too much with the taxpayers, and it's not worth risking operations, levies and things in the future over. I do agree that it'd be great to secure some of that property for future expansion, if not just for the middle school. Leaves the options open for the rest of the schools as well, but I don't think we can acquire or advise that it's acquired during the domain.
Okay. Are there other questions, comments? By the way, anyone can make a call for consensus if you would like. It doesn't have to be me. And I see a yellow. Now, are you answering? Okay, that would be.
Question of clarification.
That'd be a yellow.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Did I mention I'm colorblind? I thought I was holding yellow, that was green.
That was good. So, we've got Molly with the question, Tor with the question, Dorothy with the question, and then Scott and Steve with comments. Okay, Molly, your question of clarification. She's saying, I was.
Well, it is a clarification. I mean, I just wanted to say when we gave this a 6 was not just because it would be one school. We felt that it was actually giving the district more space to do other things as well. So the way that we were changing it was not thinking. I just want to make that clear. That is correct.
Okay. And Tor, your question?
Yeah, my question is for Steve, because I'm intrigued by his idea about the postponement of the idea and finding out. But if I consider all of us sitting at this table as a random cross-section of the community and hearing how we all feel about eminent domain, my question is, between now and the next meeting, how are we going to assess in any factual way the pulse of the community on this issue? It really is a question. I'm not being too down on it. I'm saying, how will we go about doing that?
Actually, when my turn came, I was going to call to remove the eminent domain options from the list. So.
He was mulling.
Okay. So Dorothy, you had a question of clarification still?
Yes, there was mention of a 16-acre parcel of land. Any idea whether it's for sale and how much?
Yes, and I don't know.
Oh.
Okay, and Bruce, you had an answer to whose question?
Well, I sort of an answer to maybe towards, but the district, if I recall, had some surveying tool that you had begun using.
Thought stream.
Yeah. I don't, my recollection was that it's not really set up for quick response. Is that the challenge with it?
Correct.
Okay. And then Scott, you had a comment?
The comment I'll make was Hammond School District, not too recently, or just recently used eminent domain to expand their school. What was the outcry that we heard?
Okay.
They took cropland out of production.
Good parking lot.
Yeah.
Okay. Steve, you had a comment?
I did not know that, Scott. I would have heard that sooner. That's really interesting. I'd like to call for consensus to take the eminent domain options off the list. Both of them.
There's only one. I agree that.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you have.
It's kind of an answer. I mean, I don't know if this is exactly factual, but if we are a random cross-section of the community, if we can all kind of on our own survey people around us in the different situations that we represent on the eminent domain issue for the next meeting, that could give us an idea. It's not, you can't prove anything, but we have an idea.
Bruce.
Trusting everybody around the table to bring back exactly what you heard when you surveyed it.
That's what I said, you can't prove anything.
I wasn't directed at you.
No, I'm saying, I'm gonna lie.
Okay, so we have a request for call for consensus, so I'll keep the last two cards that I'm seeing, and then we'll do a call tour.
No,
Do you have another
no, I
comment?
withdraw.
Okay, Joanne, you had another comment?
I was just wondering if it's still possible to keep the Mount Nesbitt property on here as not eminent domain. I mean, is it possible to approach them for sale again? I mean, this is their last chance to sell it here for a while. Maybe they'll realize that it isn't a bad time to sell it.
Okay. Okay, you haven't answered that question, then we
It's not exactly correct, but I just want to make sure everyone realizes something that Paul inadvertently left out of his comments, and that is that the district is not allowed to pay above the
Appraised.
Thank you, the appraised value of the land. We just cannot do that. That's problematic. Thank you.
Okay, so if you could hold the other comments, we have a request for a call for consensus to remove, well, I guess B is the only one that still has Mount Nesbitt on it, right? So call for consensus in terms of dropping B for further consideration. That is building new at Mount Nesbitt. Okay, and we have, hold them up, keep them up. Okay, yeah. Okay, so Audrey, and we've got 3 oranges. Allison.
One of the most colorful months we can have.
This is diversity.
And then blue. Okay, thank you. Okay, so consensus was not reached. And so Audrey, raising her hand, and Allison, Scott, Molly, and Jen can all speak to their cards. Audrey.
I know that it is going to be really hard to try and do this, and it probably won't work, but I just can't let go of that idea that there could be something we can do more. Just keep it on for one more meeting. You said we get down to 5 by the end. Is that could just be one of the 5 in your option?
And so Allison, would you like to speak to your orange?
Yeah, I guess it just feels a little too hasty to me, like Aubrey, and I guess I'd like to know, have their feelings changed about the selling property in the last few years?
Okay, Scott?
I think my orange says it all. I don't like it, but I won't stand in the way.
Okay. Thanks. Molly?
I think there's hope. I don't want to take it on the table.
Okay, and Jen?
The same thing, I think, it might be worth, seeing if they change their mind, if we have a more developed plan, if that would change their mind, if, that sort of thing. And I think about, like what Audrey said about, trying to do a cross-cut of the community. And for me, I don't agree with eminent domain, but I think that if I was representing a parent of kids that are going to be going to this middle school for the next however many years, I would still vote for it. It might not be my choice, but I wouldn't vote it down. But I think that that representation is going to be one of the very few subsets of the community that would say yes to it, no matter if it was in the domain. So, what am I? 5% arguably? It's not enough.
Okay, so consensus was not reached on dropping option B. I would propose that we actually have our break a little bit early, a few minutes early, and then when we come back, we start in with considering, as Dick recommended, options A, L, and N. So, unless there's a problem with that, we will take a break starting now. We'll come back together at 8 minutes after 7. Yes? Bruce?
I don't have a yeah, it's just good.
What?
Mine is supposed to be.
Thank you. We were supposed to do it before break.
Oh, yeah, right.
You're right, we were. I'm sorry. Whoops, forget all that. Any comments from observers? You have the opportunity to speak for up to 2 minutes. Up to 5 people can speak. Anyone like to speak? Yes, Pat.
I was on the site committee that was years ago, and Low Nesbitt property did score our highest. And it was taken off consideration by the group because of a visceral objection to eminent domain. Okay, and everybody knew the Nesbitts and the Moes, and they went down and talked to them and had coffee with them, and oh, please. And we took it off further consideration because of the visceral objection. My mother's family was in the domain twice. If she was still alive, she would actively campaign against it. And I think there's other people in the community, okay, fight's on because I'm next. And it's just the way it is. As to the other property that came up north of Mount Stewart, that was considered in the scoring, but what I would like the committee to consider is the Bull property was a clean sheet property, 20 acres, perfect, you could just do whatever you wanted, and it got defeated. It had the worst defeat of any ballot measure. It was a 49% approval. So clean sheet, new property got wiped out.
Thank you, Pat. Any other comments? And I apologize again for getting off my own agenda. Okay. Any other comments? Okay, so it's now 7 o'clock up. We'll come back at taking out of the parking lot the idea of discussing options A, L, and N at the same time and being somewhat similar. A, L, and N. So as I understand it, let me just make sure. So that's new between the high school and Valley View. That is new on Capitol Avenue and new between Fenning, which is actually F-E-N, and Valley View. Yeah, say your joke right now and then.
Fenning, the P is silent, as in swimming.
I like that, thank you. Okay, Mike.
I'll follow that.
Tell us there, Mike.
So for clarification, and this goes back to what Michelle was saying, the charge of our committee, I think, is to make a recommendation in broad terms to the board. A, L, and N are simply, if we were to put them into a phrase, new on existing property. And so then it would be up to the board/bond committee, whatever, to decide if that was the one we came up with, to make the decision as to which part of the existing property would be best used, in the way I interpret it.
Okay, so we're gonna do round robin on this one again as well, because it seems to work, be more balanced in terms of contributing. So, Mike, is there anything else you would have to say about that?
No, other than Meg's smells really good and I'm jealous.
Okay. And she hasn't taken a bite, so Meg, let's go this way. Okay,
Oh, by the way,
so,
I wanted to say, if I may, the tour sheet seems to have gotten stuck.
It's right here.
Yeah, let's make sure that we get like a half hour.
okay, so the tour sheet needs to, remember to sign up for any, if you want to go, any date that you can make it. Okay, so Meg, what are your thoughts about A, L, and
Start again for she gave the last.
You made that go
Yeah,
last.
right. I don't mind going last.
Oh, that's right, you did go last time. Okay, sorry, Meg, you can finish eating. Jen, go ahead.
I can get through with you.
All right, I agree that they're similar, but I do think that, I'd like to keep them somewhat separate because I feel differently about the different sites as far as how I would weigh those. In response to what Mike said. Yeah. What else?
So clarifying, my understanding is that we're discussing these. We're discussing. No. We're discussing those three together, but not necessarily. Was your idea to lump them, discussion about lumping them?
Well, they're so similar that there's subtle differences, and my take is that two are similar, and the third one's kind of stepchild across the street. And that out of the three, we try to eliminate one of the three fairly easy, just based on one criteria, which should make the decision a little bit easier on the other two.
Right.
That was my take.
So are you calling for consensus, Dick, on one of them?
Well, when I suggested that, is it's a little similar, but what I was leading up to is that on L, new on capital is different than the other two, the fact that we got that street. And that's where I think we could probably eliminate that L in the discussion of L, A, and N being similar. Does that make sense?
So can I hear from that you're calling for consensus on L to drop L?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a call for consensus to drop L from further consideration. Okay, we have, here we go. L, so anybody that doesn't have green, keep them up there. Okay, so Mike. And, whoops, we have two questions of clarification.
I need more information.
Yellows need more information.
Yellows, yeah.
I need more, I don't.
Okay, so, and then Mike, any other, okay, and then an orange from Lauren. But we will put that on hold until we get these questions asked and potentially answered. Jimmy, your question.
Bill, property on Capitol Avenue, that's on that 4-acre piece of property, right?
Okay, and Joanna?
Well, I just needed more information before making a decision. I didn't have a question.
Okay, what information would you need? What further information would you need?
Well, I guess I'm not sure why people would rule that one out completely.
Okay, so, and you needed further information? Dorothy.
How many acres is the site that they're thinking of between the high school and the transportation bar?
Does anybody have an answer to that, Paul?
Or is that more? Approximately.
You can't remember. Anybody else remember or have an idea?
How does it compare to the capital?
How does it compare to the capital?
Well, I guess the Morgan Middle School present site and the Capitol site are both about 4 acres.
We're on 6.8.
Oh, and then I wondered how big that other one was.
I don't think it's adequately been studied. And
Capital.
no, how much available property there is between the high school and bus barn. And whether or not some of the bus barn parking could be used, is it all necessary or not? And then with the Capitol site, are there parcels around it that are potentially available that could enlarge that site more? Those are questions I have about that site.
Okay, so that's, and then, so having those questions been, or the request for information that's been asked. So Lauren, would you speak to your orange card?
I would have more questions that we're going to be seriously discussed, but I'm not completely opposed. I'm willing to live with removing this site from the list.
Okay.
As proposed.
Okay. Mike?
I actually have some neutrality on this one, but I did want to say there are some aspects of the Capitol site I like. It does give the middle school truly its own space. It's not shared space. I believe the safety of crossing the street can be mitigated either with traffic signals or with overpasses. To me, I believe it's similar space, if not larger than the space between the bus garage and the high school. But I do believe it'd be a tough sell to the community to say, hey, we can't fit on 6.8 acres, but we'll be happy on 4 acres. So I get that's why, I have some neutrality on it, but I don't think I want to throw it away quite yet.
Okay. So consensus was not reached on that. So we'll continue with the conversation, the discussion around options A, L, and N. Tor?
Yeah, just a point of order. Since Mike's position was neutral, can we recall for consensus?
I heard, he raised a red card, which stops, which means he's not willing to go forward. Is that still true?
I am neutral. Neutral maybe isn't the correct word. I have mixed feelings about the Capitol site, and I would like to keep it on for now. So
Okay.
my red card stands.
Sorry, okay, we got it.
Thanks. Okay, so continuing to discuss the similarities and differences between, and your thoughts about them, between options A, L, and N. Yes, Jen?
So yeah, that clarified that for sure, but I am curious, I would like to know more as we go forward between these three options as it affects things like transportation and field space and just kind of the flow of traffic. Obviously, we're operating on the assumption that Third is punched through by the time whatever happens here, which would affect, all three of these sites really, but I think maybe that's my biggest hang up with Capitol, is that I don't know how that affects the flow of traffic around that area. Pick up, drop off, all that good stuff.
So we're kind of going back, I saw faces over there, but we're kind of going back since there was clarification on that. Tor, did you have, we jumped ahead to go to Dick, so we're going to go back and we're going to pick up again. Tor.
Oh, so the round robin continue.
The round robin, sorry. We had a call.
Yeah, I feel like if we look at the option of build new on owned property, then and I absolutely feel that if that gets chosen, then the conversation about what property to recommend, because I think it's within our purview to recommend a particular property, could come after. That's all I would say. Is that we don't have to say, well, they all have to hang out separately now because each property has its own, issues. If we can agree on the substance of we want to build new on existing property, then we can move on next to the question. That's my idea there. My other idea is just that everybody who, and I'm not unenamored of the Monesman site, but everybody who is, please understand that kids will cross the street there too. So if you're concerned about Capitol, there will now be just as active a thoroughfare going through there.
Okay, Tor. Audrey?
I agree with all what Jen said. You're on the same committee, and we talked a lot about traffic problems on Capitol especially. But insurance punch through that could help with that. So I don't know if I'm really opposed to any of them, but I think the best one would be the one on Fenning Road. Since it seems to have the most space and has that extra road to help traffic.
Fenning. With a P.
Fenning.
Okay, so that's between Valley View and Fenning. Okay. Dorothy?
I asked the questions about how big the parcel of lands were, because I'm wondering if the existing Morgan Middle School is the biggest site. If it is, why are we looking at smaller sites and evaluating whether to build on smaller sites when the consensus of those that are in the school system is that we need at least 20 acres. I think that 6 acres might be more appropriate than 4 acres. But I don't know how big the acreage is for these 3.
I'm just writing down that we need more information. Do you have an answer
Well,
to
it's definitely, the high school Valley View or Fenning is definitely more than 6.8. It's somewhere in the vicinity of 10, but there was some vagueness about how, how it's shared, but it's definitely bigger than more.
Okay, so there may be some more clarity around size of the properties.
I just think something that's important, I don't think this is, I don't know.
If this is a comment, please hold it to
Well,
where.
but it's about the 20 acres. I think that is misleading.
Okay, and so hold that thought when it gets, you can expand on that when it gets to you as well.
Then
You can talk, we don't have time. Unless I fall asleep, in which case we do.
Can I, it's 42.6 acres for the high school, for the high school site.
And
Of that 42.6, 8 of it's in Whitney, and that's where the high school sits. And so between the high school and the west boundary and up to the bus barn, it's about 42 acres, supposedly, according to figures that were sent out in an email on July 30th.
Doesn't look that big.
No, it's not,
It's not, I bet that doesn't.
Well, Main
That
school,
includes Valley.
Main school grounds, EHS, 42.6 acres. The bus barn transportation is 3.4. So I'm just using the figures that the district provides, and that answers that question. Now, going back to the thing about Tor, and is that, I said earlier, is that, yeah, Morgan is 6.82 acres. And that piece that we bought is less than 5. So, following that logic, why go to a smaller site? The second thing is that I have real concern about this one versus the other two on there by Valley View, either by the high school or Valley View itself, is that you got capital, and do you have, that's 4 point some odd acres, is big enough probably just for the footprint of the building, that's it. So where are you gonna have kids crossing Capitol all the time for PE and other activities? And to me, the difference between the three is the Capitol site is safety. And with the increased traffic that people seem to be concerned about, it's going to increase. And now you're going to design it to where you have kids crossing that street day in, day out, 5 days a week, for program activities. To me, that's nuts. Now, the difference between that site and the Mold Nesbitt is, that would be a self-contained site. So you have the building and supposedly the play field. So you don't have kids crossing Third. But if you have building on Capitol, on that site, on that 4 acres, you're going to have kids crossing Capitol back and forth. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Thank you. So that's my concern. And that's why I think, just because that very issue about perceptual going from 6.8 to 4, and then having kids across the Capitol for programming, it throws it out. I guess, we can keep it on there, but I just assume, in my opinion, I'd throw that out as an option right now, and so we can concentrate on further discussion on the APs.
Do you have a process question?
Yeah, are we allowed to ask a question of clarification during round robin?
I prefer that you keep them until we get all the way around.
That's
Sometimes that stuff will be.
No, that's totally fine, I just wanted to think.
Okay. Bruce?
I think L is a problem. Well, let me address a couple things about this. One, I feel like it is within not only the purview, I think it's the responsibility of this group to make a recommendation on more than simply building a school on school-owned property. I think, particularly since there are specific pieces in front of us, it's on us. That's part of what the charge is, and I think it's part of our responsibility. And we need to do it. I green card the consensus on capital. I mean, if we're concerned about the footprint and some of the other pieces, you got 4 acres, Blue Adriatic Field, throw the sports fields over there or something if that even, I don't know if that works. But all of a sudden you've freed up an incredible amount of space between Valley View and the high school, and you're effectively utilizing 4 acres that the school owns for no additional cost. I would be concerned if we begin to talk about the 4 acres and then talk about additional property that needs to be purchased, because you're then adding additional costs that you then again have to refute somehow in the public that says, what was your common sense approach to this? You owned and controlled property, and then you went out and bought another 3 acres to get to the 7 acres you already owned in Morgan, and you paid in another $150,000 or whatever it might be in that area. So there's the issue for me. So for me, the green card on the L was, let's just be done with it. It's not a practical way to go. It's not a safe way to go. It's not a good way to manage the bus flow in and out of there. There's just nothing positive to me about that particular parcel. Done.
Okay. Allison?
I agree with Bruce. I think that blind turn.
We can switch sides next time.
Yeah. That blind turn on Fenning, I think it's a risky spot as it is now, and I don't think it's.
We're going to put a roundabout.
Yeah.
It's good.
Great, thanks.
Did you get that, Lauren? The city will put a roundabout.
That's all I have to say.
I think safety eliminates L for reasons being said. I'll also mention that A, building on Valley View has already been run and already been defeated, and there'll be a lot of people that said, we've seen this before, and we said no.
Okay, Michelle?
I think that if we're talking about building new on existing property, we shouldn't eliminate the E. I mean, that the E should be incorporated into that. And that being said, I think for the amount of, when you're talking about the cost of building new being, well, that was one encouraging thing. All the costs were pretty similar. So why would we spend the money to build new on a space, and we're still gonna have to deal with what to do with Morgan in all of those scenarios. And so why not look at A and N as the 2 build new options that at least you're getting to design in a space that's more open, and you have a little more flexibility that way, rather than restricting yourself to a very small footprint and still having to deal with what to do with field work in any of those scenarios. So.
Did that address the concern you had earlier?
No. But I just think that, I think that the 20 acres, and that it's just not about this topic, so we can hold it. But the recommendation from OSPI is for a new middle school on 10 acres plus an acre for every 100 students, which estimating it, projecting at about 800 students is 18 acres. But I think that what's really important to understand is that's because that would be, and I think Scott maybe mentioned this earlier, that that's an isolated school and not accounting for field space that is shared. So I think that when we keep coming back to saying 20 acres, I think that's misleading, that that is not a defined criteria for what needs to happen.
Lauren?
I was really persuaded by Bruce and others about the disadvantages on capital. I guess I would just switch to approving a green card, sorry, on taking L out of the mix, build new on capital. So, because of, just to get that discussion finished there, too many disadvantages, too much that's absurd about going to a smaller space and acreage. The other two, my big concern is the discussion of what happens to the existing Morgan site and what is the cost to taxpayers to deal with the existing Morgan site. Because that, in any build new, that existing Morgan site will be left to be dealt with, which can be costly. I think that's all. Otherwise, I don't feel satisfied with either A or N in the whole picture of the quality of the school. So I think that's all.
Yeah, I never thought that capital site would be a good site for school.
Is that it? Short and sweet? Okay.
They'd be a great site for tennis courts and soccer.
Okay. Joyce?
Yeah, I agree with that, even though I wanted to keep the discussion going. So a couple notes I have. The traffic crossing to Mount Nesbitt, I think, would be different than crossing Capitol because it is a larger site and would be more self-contained than the smaller site at Capitol would require using services on either side of the street. I think that, again, what Michelle was saying about the size of the property, if your, that size, which was 18 acres, not 20, could be reduced if you're sharing things such as the football field, the parking for performance, which in the evenings you could use the parking that the students are using for the high school. Soccer and baseball fields are all things that could potentially be shared, and that's acreage that you could take out of that 18-acre OSPI recommendation. If you're alone at that Morgan site, then you don't have those shared spaces without having to travel across town to get to them. There's some amenities for adjacencies downtown, such as the library and the youth center, but other than that, you don't have a lot of adjacencies. Okay, increase in capital traffic, I think would be greater if you did put the school on Capitol. Capitol has 1,400 cars a day plus, and as opposed to 3rd Avenue, you'd have about 500 trips a day. And so I personally think off of 3rd Avenue is a better place for the actual school than the Capitol site. And I have concerns over placing the building where the last bond had it, even though there's things I like about the middle school being between the high school and the elementary school. But I think a lot of people had a hard time understanding the potential of that site once you moved things out of the way. While the Fenwick site is a more clean site, just mostly soccer fields, and I think people can imagine that that's a more spacious site, even though I think either of them have great potential if you move something to the other side of Capitol, like soccer and tennis, or shifting fields around. So anyway, those are my thoughts.
Steve?
So if I remember correctly, we started this round robin about the idea of removing L from the list, and then there was a call for consensus, which failed to remove L from the list. But the reasons behind the red card that stopped that call for consensus were actually more like they were kind of what's halfway between red and orange. They were halfway between red and orange. Would it not save time? Would it not save time if we had another call for consensus at this time about dropping L? I'm calling for consensus to drop L.
And actually, the round robin was about considering options A, discussing options A, L, and N. There was a bubble where we had a call for consensus on dropping L. So,
Nevertheless, I'm calling for consensus on dropping L.
okay, we'll do another consensus on dropping L. Let's see this.
But do we have to finish the round robin for the other folks?
We will.
Sorry.
Okay, so that did not, okay. And so, any other comments?
Yes, one other comment. It seems that we're having a little trouble letting go of control of the site, and as I think Tor might have said, we could always settle on the big question about building new and then revisit the site issue later. And in other words, I'm speaking in favor of lumping the build new options together.
Molly?
Okay, I just might remind you, but Michelle said something else too, which is, we're talking about build new on district properties, but we aren't talking about building new on the Morgan Middle School site. So, that's kind of odd. I mean, I don't know when we'll do that. But, I don't have anything new to say.
Okay. Thanks, Molly. Jimmy?
I pass, call for consensus.
Call for consensus on what?
On dropping L.
Let's just wait.
We just tried.
Okay, we have Meg. Is it okay with you? We just have Meg's.
Oh, sorry.
Mike's.
Well, Mike.
Oh.
Yeah. You said for the same reason, right? Is that what I heard?
I was the red card. You just wanted to speak at some point.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said. I'm sorry. That was my mistake. I thought I'd heard you say for the same reasons.
No.
So, okay. So speak to your red card, please, and then Meg will finish the red. Okay.
Well, Mike hadn't done the round robin either, right?
Started with the round robin.
I did not start the
No, he didn't, Jen.
Jen started the
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was.
That's fine. We can start it with Jen. So would you like to speak to your red card, then we'll go back to Meg, and then you can have yours speak.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. My purpose of putting up the red card was to invite some discussion about the capital site, which is what we have accomplished here. It helped me to clarify something, and actually, Bruce, if I could reach across the table and kiss you right now, I might, because in my mind, I had never considered moving Andriani Field across onto the Fenning property and opening up that space. I was never a big fan of the space between Valley View, or between the bus garage and the high school, just because it felt very crowded to me. To move Andriani Field across the street would open that up for me, and I would feel much more comfortable and happy with that site. And Scott was used to said we failed it on that site. By opening it up, that to me would make me a much more positive voter on that spot. So that said, my red immediately becomes a green with the possibility then of opening up that site to other uses and opening up so it's possibly moving the other field across the street and therefore opening up the space to a greater space for the uses.
Okay. Okay. And let's.
So now I can talk, can I?
Would you be okay with just
Yes.
taking one more person and then we'll finish the Meg? If you have anything to say.
I don't really have anything to add, except
Okay.
to second what Molly said about, I do not consider E to be a similar option, but build new and Morgan is not part of this group. Even though it's building on a different property, it's a very different option. Mainly because it does address what happens to Morgan, whereas the other ones leave that question open.
Okay. So we have a call for consensus on dropping L from further consideration as a site for Morgan Middle School, for a middle school in Ellensburg. Okay, we have green and one blue. All right. Okay. Phew, there's another one. Okay. Just like that. Okay, so you can take L off. Yeah, he's on it, just like that. Okay, so, okay. Okay, so there's been discussion on A and N. Does anyone have a suggestion for the next discussion? Or, did you have a question?
Well, I had a comment. from something that came up during the round robin. Something that really struck me personally, and maybe I just don't understand how far off they were, so maybe that's my misunderstanding, but after the presentations from NAC, I did some really quick math, and the average of 5 of those proposals they gave us was $30.3 million, which is, if I'm correct, about $8 million less than the last bond. That like blew me away. And I guess my feeling is that if we cut off even half of it, 4 million, how many votes would that buy? And we were 8 votes short, you know. No, I mean, behind the votes. I lived in New York, but I'm not that. But I mean, you know what I'm saying, how much would that already do? And it kind of goes, you know, I'll be the respectful opposition to something Scott said, which is, I said from the beginning, I don't think just because it was an issue in the last bond means that something, an element of the last bond is not something we would go with. And I think that, you know, if we find that that property really is the best property, then perhaps a savings of $4 to $8 million would be enough to sway people with that issue. So I just want to bring that up. So.
Okay, thank you. Dorothy, you have a question?
Do I have a question or a statement or what? I'm not sure what I have.
Okay, there's no one else in line. Go ahead and say what was there.
If we combine A and N, I think it is, and if somebody is for one of them and somebody else is for the other of them, you have 2 votes for the combination. So I think they need to be separated. So we address each of the options by themselves. Does that make sense?
What I'm hearing you say is that you want to keep them separate because they are separate issues. Now, we have a choice at this point, and I can make the choice, or I can take, you know, if there are recommendations as to what you want to discuss next. We have about 40 minutes left for tonight. What would you like to address? And we have a question from Michelle.
Well, my question is, of the 7 that are left, are there any, when we went around and gave our 5 lowest, that were in the mix of ones that, I mean, if we go back to what we said originally, I know we didn't knock off 5, so are there some that had high scores that we said we didn't like to start with? And maybe that's a discussion, maybe that's a starting point.
So your question is, were there others that had a relatively high?
Maybe what were the scores, what were the amounts of dislike for these 7 options, so that then maybe we start with the ones that were the least popular and see if there's a reason to keep it on the list.
Okay, so that's a recommendation for, okay, I can give an answer to that, and let's see, I have Meg, Bruce, and Steve after that. So here's a good card. So there were 3 people who had A as their lowest, 1 who had E, which is new on the middle school site, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 who had F as their lowest, 4 who had G as their lowest, and then there was H. There were 8 for H, but that has been, it seems to be clarified that needs to be clarified. It has been suggested that it needs to be clarified before it goes forward. And N, there was 1 person who had that as their lowest, 5.
And nobody had B?
3 people had B. Oh, I thought I said, I'm sorry. So we have 3A, 3. Say what?
And B? No.
No. 3 people. Bruce, Dick, and Meg had B as on their lowest.
No, I don't have that. I have Dick, me, and Molly.
Dick, Bruce, Meg, and Molly.
Okay, that's good.
What did I do?
Molly did not have B.
Roll the tape.
Oh, that was a power vote.
Molly had D as in dog, not B as in boy. Okay. Okay, we got that. Okay, so 1, E was 1. F was 5. G was 4. And H was 8. And N was 1.
And so go back with A and B again.
A and B were both 3, had 3 each. 3 different people.
And if we're going to say what our top 4 are, and maybe that would be the other.
If you would like to do that, if you have, let's see, we have, we have 4 comments. Meg, what was your comment?
I forget.
Okay, we'll just, okay, come back to you. Bruce. Okay.
Okay, the main reason that for the $8 million, you mentioned that, Troy, did you mention that? Decrease from last time are soft costs and state match. And it's possible that the state match is not 13 million for every option. We haven't really been specific enough about that. So just wanted to point out where that came from.
Also,
okay,
the third avenue extension was in the last bond too.
That's true, but that was not really I mean, there's a whole lot of ups and downs, but the basic bottom line is.
It was over $1 million.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other ups and downs.
You're also 11,000 square feet less.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay,
But
you have a
that
question of
Yeah, I just have a
clarification?
question for Meg. So Meg, I'm sorry. Do I hear you saying that it's too much of an unknown to not make a decision, or do I hear you saying that there really could be a cost savings of?
No, I think there
It's
is,
real.
but it's real. But-
Okay, all right. That's what I thought.
Well, I mean, the state match part may not be.
Okay, understood.
Okay, Bruce and Lauren, I got you.
Yeah, I'm good.
What?
I'm done.
Okay. Steve?
Well, you're not good.
It seems to me that if we're going to keep the different build new site options separate, then we're going to need to take a look at the geography of the high school Valley View site. I think the 42 acres is deceptively large. If you look at where you're going to fit in buildings, it's not simple to see where you would drop a middle school in there. I think Bruce's suggestion and Mike's offer to kiss him is really important because
Just the first point.
Can you take a rain check on that?
Is that camera on?
That's a really important suggestion because it shows that we don't have to keep any of the current plans as is. And maybe as an idea for the next discussion, maybe we should take a look at how to make each of the remaining options better and then have another go at it.
Okay, I've got that in the parking lot, make each option better. Okay, and Joanne?
I'd like to suggest that maybe we do a call for consensus or possibly a discussion on F, to renovate all Morgan Middle School. I know it didn't get as many votes as H, but I would have taken my H vote and moved it to F, because I wasn't quite clear that H was like the deciding vote. So I think that there's a lot of problems with that.
So we have a call for consensus, which normally would trump comments. We do have but we can take the comments if you're okay with that. And you have a question of clarification?
I do. I've looked at the new high school, and I think I mentioned, it has cracks in the foundation. You said that there are different reasons for cracks in the foundation. Lincoln and Morgan, the older existing schools don't have cracks. Is it possible to find out why the cracks are there? It's all throughout. It's all around the hill. I don't know if it's because it's unstable because of groundwater. If so, I think we need to know.
I can't.
Okay, does somebody have a green card for that? And we're actually discussing. Okay, that's because you're concerned about citing something on that 42, somewhere that 42 acres. And I see you there, Mike. Let me just get that question down. And Mike, you have a question about process? Or
Again, I think we need to be careful about throwing out statements like that unless we have something to back it up. I've never heard of cracks in the foundation of the high school. I would like to hear from an expert that that is the case before that becomes some sort of public. That's the type of stuff that goes out in the public rapidly and becomes the truth when it may not be the truth.
So I have listed asking about the cracks.
Asking is fine.
Okay, to NAC, presumably, would they be the ones?
Well, I think it's asking if there are any, and then why, if there are any.
Okay, so are there, so that's something that you have is that a question, is that a clarification?
I rode around the high school, the new portion, and I looked at the foundation. There are many little cracks. So that's why I asked. I'm not making false statements. They're just there.
Okay, so Dorothy, would you be okay with having NAC address?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so I've got that on the list in terms of.
As long as they looked at it, is that and evaluate whether it's a problem with the groundwater or not.
Okay, so you're concerned about cracks in relation to the groundwater. Okay. Okay, and so that's the issue with the groundwater. Okay, so I will communicate that with Tom. Yes, Lauren. Is that a stop process?
This is a question about the process that there is a call for consensus. Could you
Okay, the call for consensus, but usually a question for information.
Oh, yeah, not question that.
Okay.
At this point.
Okay, so Molly and Lauren, if you're willing to hold your comments, we have a call for consensus on dropping option F from further consideration. Can we have a show of cards about that? Okay. Okay, Lauren. Okay, anybody that isn't green, please keep the cards up. Allison and Dorothy and Steve and Scott. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 red cards. Did I miss anybody? Bruce, Lauren, Allison, Dorothy, Steve, and Scott. Anybody I missed? Okay, and then Meg and Audrey and Molly. Orange. Okay. Okay, so I'd say that doesn't go. Doesn't fly. You know. So we can, yeah, so let's go back to Molly and then Lauren's comments, and then, wait, let's see, actually before we do that, we have to, unless you pass, we have to speak to the reds and to the oranges. Does anybody who raised a red or an orange want to speak?
I can do that. Am I recognized?
If you're speaking about F, if you're speaking about why you vote,
I am. And at the same time, part of my reason is related to my comments, so I can put them both together, and that is that I feel like we should spend the rest of the time that we have tonight developing a set of questions that makes it possible for us to consider E, F, G, and H. Just start getting to a systematic set of questions that we still need information about, because I think I heard earlier that, we just are a different place about it. So that's both my comment and the reason that I don't want to remove red F.
Okay, anybody else want to speak to the red card? Dorothy?
I don't want to take that option off the table.
Okay.
I think it's important to be done.
Okay. You had a question, clarification?
Yeah, I'm confused what questions. We've had a lot of information. We have a lot of information. So I'm not clear what further questions, when you say that we would need to develop, further analyze those four.
Okay, so that was speaking to, okay, we'll hold that. We need to finish speaking to the red cards and orange cards. And then we will bring up the idea of the questions for clarity.
I understand it, I'm sorry, am I speaking?
You are speaking.
I understand the reasoning behind proposing to remove F, but I think it's early. I think, as I suggested earlier, going through a process of trying to improve all of the proposals and looking at the geography for the new locations is something that we need to do. Someone suggested removing build new on the current Morgan site. I could see doing that because I think it would go over like a lead balloon with the voters.
Okay, any other speaking to red cards on the option, on the call for consensus on dropping option F?
I think there's a lot of voters that want us to consider it, and we should consider it. I agree, by the way, on the E new on that,
Okay.
dropping that to the consensus.
Okay, before we do another call for consensus, Molly has a comment. Is that true?
Well, that was so long ago.
I know.
She's just been chastised for changing the
I
subject.
told him, I you guys, I gave him a bad time over here for changing the subject, so just
I
like
apologize.
That's why he's sitting between the two of us.
My comment had been earlier when Michelle, long ago, said maybe we should try talking about some of these ones that we are for. And I feel very strongly that we haven't defined the H and especially H, but some of the others that we, so then it could totally change what that is. So I really would think, I think Lauren brought it up too, was trying to figure out what it is we're going to ask questions to get us to the place where we can define these better so people, I mean, in H we had two groups that just didn't even vote on it. So obviously there's something wrong. So that would be right.
Okay. So I heard in here a call for consensus on dropping option E, which is building new on Memorial Middle School. Is that true?
No.
Okay, that's wrong. Okay, never mind. So, Meg?
I want to say that I think it would be unwise to list our top options at this point since we don't seem to understand what several of them are. So I would be against that.
Okay, so we have two suggestions. One is to make each option better and look at the geography for the build new as part of that. And then questions for to clarify. We have 25 minutes left. There is going to have to be, that's not going to happen here, all of it. So there would be a possibility of creating a subgroup to help with that. I have some questions that, for clarity, that have been brought up so far. Michelle, you have a comment.
Well, I guess I'm thinking in terms of Steve's comment about making them better and his combining that with this idea of the questions that need to be answered. We're the ones that defined what these options are. We're the group that made these options. So rather than having to seek clarification from our guest speakers next week or 2 weeks from now, it seems like, I mean, because our team did not even look at H because it was very ambiguous. I felt much better understanding the difference between F and H after the conversation. And while H was one of my lowest previously, it would be my number 4 now. And so rather than, it seems like we are the ones that can say, what do we mean by A, B, E, F, G, H, and N, so that then we can level the playing field. And I don't think that requires NAP. I mean, I don't think that requires our guests for next week to help us do that. We're defining it.
Okay. Molly?
Well, I was, you said you had the NAC slideshow presentation. If we could get that up, it would be a help. I mean, I think that's where we're having one of the issues about what the different options that they had in mind for the renovation. And then maybe define what it, just be a suggestion.
Because renovate all of Oregon suddenly tonight became with an additional 10, with an additional 10,000 square feet when we were talking about it in our groups, that wasn't a factor.
So there's it seems like there's movement toward going through each of the remaining options and clarifying with this group, clarifying any questions that would go on. And what do you want? Is there any clarity needed on option A? Any?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Okay, let's, should we start with option A or?
No. We started with the new before and that's where renovation got muddled.
Okay.
That, we pretty much know that the new, and this is where I think we're having our problem, is in the renovation one. So I would like to start with renovation.
Which one, F or H?
Any, I mean, or I guess it would help to see what some of the NAC
Are you talking about the drawings that they presented to the school board when they got?
No.
This is the costing thing, is all we've got here.
From last time.
From,
But I don't think that's going to answer, is the question.
Well, he had drawings up at our last meeting.
He had the, on the side.
Those were from.
That was, I think that was the city.
Community Center.
Was that?
No, it was the big blown up picture that they have in the slideshow that's on the district website, about halfway through it.
can you go down?
It's on the one that's that they presented to the board. And it's on the district website.
Okay, the one
Oh,
we
that-
have
okay,
is from 2 weeks
Yeah.
ago.
The one from the
That-
interviews.
Yeah.
Oh, the one from the interviews,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, but I don't think that.
Do we have that on, do you have that on that one?
This will show that additional
Okay, maybe
10,000
maybe
That's
that's
the
the
beach.
But they would have to cite it, have to build new and remodel and.
But in the.
Okay, so it's getting late, so we're losing the cards here. Lauren, you have a comment?
I suggest at the time we have left that we go to H and pick something that we want to call H, and I would like it to be at least starting the discussion, and we do have 25 minutes. I'd like it to start with what the Vassetti plan is. Other mixed plans, H, NAC, or Vassetti report. And in this hole, that's a big hole that we've never talked about in this group.
Okay, so we have,
We only have time for one thing now.
discussion on H. You okay with having a discussion on H? Okay, clarity on H. So, we better do round robin. Make sure everybody gets a chance. Okay, so,
Jeff, it's G2.
It's G2.
yeah. That's one of that's NAC's version of H. Okay, so, Lauren, did you have anything further that you wanted to say about H? H is the same, well, G2 is, as I understand it, G2 is actually a subset of H. It is one of the possibilities for H. So H has, as it says on here, it says that many possibilities exist here. So the NAC plan is called G2. Their plan for a mixed renovate, build new is G2. Yes?
And the other ones that we actually have specified are their plan in the interviews, which may or may not be the same as G2. So that's another option. And Vassetti. Those are the only three that I know that have been
somewhat specifically proposed.
Okay, so NAC, G2, NAC at the interview, whatever that was, and Bassetti. Okay, so that'd be H1, 2, and 3, or whatever, or we could name them X, Y, Z. Probably better. It'd make my life a lot easier. Okay, so, yes.
Sorry, just to consider that, then, because of the shortness of time, but if we get some work done, how about we take NAC plan of retaining and renovating 29 and 35 portions, comma, gym and auditorium, and raising the other bids. If we just looked at that together, we all have it on paper, and we say, okay, what are some pros and cons of that, or what further information would we need to evaluate that? Could it, what do you think about that?
G2.
Anyone?
Okay, so G2, making H into G2, and making the NAC at interview X, and making Bassetti Y. Any problems with that? So we get them off the, yes, Joanne?
I think G2 is almost exactly, conceptually, is almost exactly like the studies H. It's very, very, very close. They're keeping the old historic portions of the building, they're eliminating the newer stuff to build a new addition that matches the historic building more. I mean, I think that's pretty similar between this one and the Bassetti's.
Okay.
I don't see much of a difference. Maybe it's exactly how they showed the addition is the main difference, but the conceptual, the concept is the same.
Okay, Dorothy, you had a question of clarification?
Yes, you said Bassetti was white, or make it white. NAC was something, and then the other one was H, I guess? I missed that.
Well, that was just a proposal. It looks like that's off the table. I'm not sure. Okay, call for consensus on what?
That G2 is that definition there.
The G2 is the same as the Bassetti. G2 is pretty much
It's almost
the same concept as the Bassetti concept.
Okay, so I'm confused. What you're saying is you want to define H, you want to call for consensus on defining H as G2 / Bassetti / NAC and interview?
Well,
It's the same concept.
Okay.
Just saying that.
So is there, first of all, let me just, because I'm seeing different faces here going on. Call for consensus on whether you're okay with defining NAC G2, the NAC that was presented at the interview, and the Bassetti report all together as the same conceptual thing. Is that, okay, Jimmy?
If you're all agreeing with that, you're much more intelligent than I. I do not know what that means, particularly that third point up there, provide additions to reach the desired program. I don't know what that means.
What I think.
Okay, so we
I
have.
don't know what that means conceptually. Neither, I don't know, I just don't know what it means. Demolish the existing portions of, I know what that means, just tear them down. And then retain and modernize the 1929 classrooms and auditorium. Okay, I know what that means. Tear them down. Modernize them. And the 35 classrooms, okay. So if that's what we're going to say we're going to want done. Okay, but I don't know what that means.
Well, I think that.
Okay, so we have a clarification. Now, there was, Jimmy expressed his concerns, why he blocked consensus on combining as the same thing conceptually, NAC G2, which is that, NAC at the interview, and Bassetti, conceptually.
I wasn't at the interview, so I don't know what was happened at the interview.
And I think what I think they all three are, it's all just the idea of take out the newest portions, renovate and modernize the oldest portions, and build to fill the rest of the space that's been lost.
Do we have, that's what you think, but
That's what he did. That was his presentation. That was his presentation a month ago.
you're saying that was at the interview.
Okay.
But all those,
Okay, we're gonna stop and we're gonna go with that's why we have the cars. So, Lauren, do you have a comment or do you have an answer?
I have an answer to what I heard from Jimmy as a question of clarification. I understand, I think I understand what you're saying, so if we define H as we have just said, then your question comes in, then we need to develop the questions of, oops, now it's gone. The third question that you felt was unclear. You know, that's what I'm just trying to get to, is that we end up tonight with a set of, you know, the first step is, if it's true that what Michelle said, that those three are essentially the same, but still many questions arise out of all of them. And then we list those questions, so that we know what we
Okay, so we're gonna do, does anybody else, do you guys wanna talk before we do a recall? No. Okay, so we're gonna do a recall on the, making H, defining H, and I'm just gonna say this out loud because I have to write it down and type it out for you guys tomorrow, so. Defining H as, taking the newest down, and renovate what's left, and then add new as necessary. Is that the understand? I mean, is that, I mean, like, if I type this out, I'm not gonna get a whole bunch of grief tomorrow? Okay.
Oh, you'll get the green.
I'm much more able to deal with it in the morning than at night. And we have a red from Steve. That's okay. This is the process. Okay. Steve, would you like to speak to your red, and then Jimmy will speak to your
Yes,
orange?
if we think of the next step as being, going through a process of trying to make all of the current proposals better, the differences between the three things that currently exist within H disappear. And they all turn into sort of the same thing, which we are trying to make better, which is not necessarily tearing down the newest parts, remodeling the oldest parts.
But that's what they only found, yes.
Okay, that was Steve's comment to his red. Jimmy, would you have your comment to your orange? Same thing? Same thing, but you won't block. Okay. So, we're having a consultation.
Want me to say that?
It would be helpful. You have further comments on your red?
Yes, I disagree with defining H at this time as tearing down the new parts and keeping the new parts. What H really is keeping the parts of the building that are appropriate to keep and building additional new parts of the building so that it reaches the program. That is, all program needs are met as a result of this option.
Okay, and so just my clarification, because I'm beginning to get lost. H and G are, how is G different than H, the way you define it?
G raised oldest
G2.
and H raised newest.
Yeah.
That seems kind of different to me.
But we're not saying to lump G into H.
We're not saying to.
No, G2.
Confused by G2. It's.
We're just trying to define H.
We're defining H as tear down the new, modernize, and add on to the historic. G is get rid of the, keep the historic core and build around.
G is tear down the historic core.
Raise the oldest.
Okay, everybody has in front of them also the full option definition. So I would request that we go to option G and option H on the full option sheet, which is on the back, Molly, of the one that you have in right hand. So it's on the back of the costing sheet. So G is retain the newer wings, both G and H, new some part of Morgan, and build new, and renovate what's left and build new. G retains the newer wings, so that would be what, 60 and 90s, 60s and 90s, and the historic theater, and takes the rest of the oldest building down. H well, is very undefined in that place. So I'm hearing that there is a possibility of defining it as taking the newest down, that is the 60s and 90s wings, renovating what's left, and adding new as necessary, which is also true.
That makes sense.
Okay, is that clarified? Now, does that work for you then, to just define H as taking down the two new wings, renovating, or not?
I've lost sight of the necessity for defining H in any way other than taking the NAC and/or Bassetti reports and making them better.
But what we said,
Okay, and Joanne's had a card up for a while.
This is an answer to Jimmy's question. It may be just saying how big that addition is to reach the square footage of the program is all that was missing there. It's basically, the addition is just the additional square footage to meet the program. And I don't know what number that is, but the architect probably can figure that out pretty quickly. And so all I was trying to say is I believe that Bassetti's concept is the same concept as this, H.
Okay.
And then we can make it better.
Okay.
I agree. Make it better.
Okay, there's not a question on the thing. So Michelle, you had a comment, then Dorothy, then Audrey.
I think that Joanne just covered mine, that study and this is the same concept.
The details are different, the concept is the same. Is that what?
That was just, I hadn't heard it before she spoke, so.
Okay,
I'm done.
okay. Dorothy?
Can we put out a decision on this in the next meeting or something? Because I would like to go over these more and see whether they're the same or not.
Okay.
I don't have that clear in my mind.
Okay. Audrey?
I would just like to say if we, as regards to H, before we can make it better, we need to actually have the option defined. No matter how bad or how rough it is, it just needs to be there before we can really work on it. So, it's so unclear now.
Okay. Okay, Jimmy? You didn't have one. Okay. Bruce?
I don't believe it's unclear. I feel like we're back where we were 5 to 8, and we could have been out of here at quarter after. If you look at H, it's defined. It's the NAC and Bassetti reports. The Bassetti report has been shared, the NAC report is up there, and that also has been shared. It's not changed. If we accept what was there as other mix, it's defined. There may be issues around square footage, which will impact cost, but my understanding is those would be the questions that I think Lauren is saying we need to flesh out. If we're looking at this as an option, here's where we go. So it's done, it's defined. I would call for consensus once more on what we're adding into H, have it consistent with what's been in front of us since whenever, and go.
Okay, so defining H as other mixed plans?
No.
That's what it says.
This is
Other mixed
If I may,
This
since
is
I
what
started,
it is.
I call for consensus, please. If
Yeah.
I may, no.
Please define for me.
Okay, other mixed was this weird thing that is put in front of us,
Oh, yeah.
which has confused the conversation through this particular exercise. H was NAC or Bassetti reports, which is functionally retaining old and whatever that is. I'm not even tracking anymore. But Bassetti took down the new, it shored up, and then I don't think they added space and made it. Okay, so the point is, it's still the same. And by putting other mixed in there, it added an element of doubt that actually has never been part of the conversation with this group.
So what you're saying is take other mixed plans out and defining H as NAC or Bassetti reports
As a conceptual, because it's a conceptual construct, which allows us to then ask the questions that I think we would have been talking about. Can we make this better? Do we make this better? Do we then want to just come back, have the discussion, and green card it out if we need to.
Okay, so there's a request for a call for consensus on defining age as the NAC or Bassetti reports that take down the new wings, renovate the remaining, and add as necessary. We have a call for consensus, and we have, is that red? Okay. And Dorothy, would you speak to your red, please?
I'm confused about the different reports. Maybe it's my age. I would like to look at them again. I would like to read them through and take some notes. And then I would like to look at this question. But right now, I don't feel real secure.
Okay. Okay, fair enough. We're red to red. And we are just about ready. And if there's anyone that you would like to ask for help with this, if you're to help you clarify, please. Oh, you got the reports. Okay. And so we have a couple more minutes before we look back at the meeting. I've seen cards. I don't know if you just put it back in the envelopes or what. Put it back in the envelopes. Okay. So yes. Wait. Process. Is that a process? Okay.
So the next meeting, are we scheduled to have financial folks come?
Yep. As it currently stands.
Right,
In
and
the
then
draft.
what's the next time we're gonna have the architects come?
Next time.
Wouldn't it be helpful if we had the 5 concepts to them now, and say Bassetti, wherever that is, assuming that they will take that and put together a concept for each one of those, so at the next meeting, we have something to really chew on. Now, whether we as a group accept that concept and want some changes, fine, but we need something to work with, and something to analyze, and something to look at. And so it seems to me is that tonight, we need to say, here's 5 concepts, or 4, or 3, or 2, and I guess we're at 5. Say, now you need to refine your pencils on these 5 concepts, and you present them to the next meeting. And then we can hash out, okay, those 5, and start sorting from those. And I think the financial folks is that when NAC has the numbers, and then the financial folks can sit there and say, okay, here's how that impacts the bonding. That's what my suggestion is that we take the 5 and agree to the H, and give it to NAC and have them come with a concept for the next meeting, with numbers.
We'll have
Okay,
more than
Meg.
5 anyway.
I was just going to decide to say what I think those 5 concepts are. I think they're build new on existing property, except more, out there. There's H, which is I would call new plus design. H is cool. I mean, it's renovate plus new is what I meant to say. Renovate plus new. There's there's build new on the existing site, which I think is a different kind of option, but maybe others don't want to carry that forward. And then there's the remodel everything, which I think is worth carrying forward because it's cheap. And then there's the tear down the old and keep the new. So those are the 5 concepts that I see as really being quite representing different concepts.
I agree. Okay, Molly, did I hear something about calling for consensus? You have to, yeah, it's hard when you sit next to me. Hear me.
Well, I'll just throw this one out. I am wondering, and I don't know how many votes it got, but I would be willing to risk looking at a call for consensus on getting rid of G.
Okay, we have a call for consensus now. Did you have a problem with the process, Laura? I mean, Lauren?
I did, only in that, we had someone down at that end wanted to talk about 5 scenarios and asking if I can hear a call for consensus on that, so I don't know what's happening with that.
There was no call for consensus, there was discussion. Okay, so now where we are is we're calling for consensus on dropping option G from further consideration. Option G is taking down the oldest bits at Morgan, keeping the 60s and 90s wing, and fixing those up and adding some new. Call for consensus on dropping option G. Let's see some cards, take them back out of the envelope. Okay, so Lauren and Scott, the reds coming here. Scott, Dorothy, and Audrey, and then Allison and Mike. Any other oranges that I missed? Okay, so,
No, this is a process.
okay, process.
With all due respect, it's now 8:27 according to this clock. I don't see how, at this point, going through the red is going to
We're not.
advance anything.
And that was just.
I'm a little concerned that we've lost a bit of focus for our next meeting.
Okay, so what we need to do now is go through assessment of the meeting and what we would like to have at the next meeting. We have 3 minutes to do that. Okay, we have a group from Faith.
I am disappointed in getting eliminated more options, and I thought we were calling for consensus on this idea, which is why I was trying to say which 5 I thought they were.
Okay. So I didn't hear a call for consensus, so. Dorothy, you have a question of clarification.
I do. How long will they be speaking to us next? How long is it organized, the next meeting?
At this point, it was, we have 2 hours to evaluate options, 10 minutes for question and answer on possible funding options and property tax context, which is Meg's handouts, 10 minutes for question and answer on environmental sustainability issues and reference info map from Steve's handouts, 10 minutes for Q&A on performing arts program needs, the performing arts handout, and then NAC, Hill International Bond Consultant and Bond Attorney present to answer questions as needed. Does that answer your question? Okay, other comments? Bruce?
Well, I would actually affirm Meg's, this one was much more of a struggle. I felt like we should have been further down. I think we could have been, we didn't get there. And I think it would have helped our next, now I'm really unclear what we can really at this point do in that next meeting. I'm not clear if we haven't asked some of the questions that we need to around these different, or if we're going to flesh that out. I don't see the value necessarily in NAC coming back. I don't know what they're going to do. It's different than what they have already done, which is, here's the ballpark, here's what it's going to cost, here's the elements in each one of these options. We've got it. What are we going to do? What's different? I'm not clear. Maybe it's informational, but the bond piece, maybe we need to begin building that. But again, I'm a little on the end, we have a range, and somebody said we were at 30.5 on average. So maybe we're in a range now where we can start gathering that information, if that's part of the charge. But I think if we're going to get this done, it's got to narrow.
Okay, Michelle, I'm losing track here. Focus. Lauren, Joanne, and Steve, and if I got the order wrong, I'm sorry.
Well, Michelle, you had just asked what we wanted to have for focus for the next meeting, and according to our timeline, I feel like we have to do whatever it is in our power to get down to 2 choices, so that final meeting is just making the last. I think that that has to be what we do, because if we are we have more than two at the end of that, at the end of next week, or at the end of the next meeting, I don't know how we'll ever get down to one.
Okay. Lauren?
As far as evaluating the meeting, I was just hoping that we would take a little more careful look at the renovate Morgan options, you know, the list that we've been talking about, that we didn't get to, for the sake of everyone being on the same page. So for me, it's not enough to say, yes, we can all go and read it, like read the study report, but rather that we define some of the parameters and then we see together what they are, so that hopefully we can get to consensus on which of them might, at least we know what we're evaluating, which we didn't.
Joanne?
I was just going to say, I mean, I agree with the renovation thing focus, but I think that those new build news sites are different enough that they shouldn't just be lumped together. I'm sorry, I think that some people vote for one and not for another, and I worry about lumping them together. That's all.
Okay. Steve?
I have a much more positive view of how this meeting went than Meg Bruce. At least 3 of the remaining 7 options are poised to be eliminated. We just couldn't quite bring ourselves to do it this time. Not going to be a problem next time. We're easily going to get rid of 3 of these. And I think once we take a look at the geography of the potential build new sites, that's going to help a lot also. And if I could be specific about one of the ways that I'd like to see the Bassetti proposal made better, it does not allow for improving the classroom size situation. That's an example of something that would be easy to fix, and I think we need to address that before, Dick, we go asking NAC to rerun their calculations.
Okay, so, yay, we're 5 fewer than we were, you know, that's something. Yeah, I wanted to get down to 5. And so I charge each of you to do whatever you need to do to learn about these options, so that when we come back in 2 weeks, you don't have any questions about what these options mean. Talk to each other, talk to me, and let's get that information. Bruce.
Okay, that's good. I'm still not clear. There are a lot of guests, or whatever we're calling them, and I would agree with Michelle. The focus at this point needs to be doing this. Because if we can't get to this, either we blow the timeline out, or we need to schedule up meetings, or we need to push the timeline out, which we had also discussed. But I'm still not clear in the agenda that you just read through that the absolute primary focus is getting us down to, if it's 2 options, and then we have that. But I don't want at this point 20 minutes of a bond guy standing here in a suit telling me what the interest rates are and how to get points or whatever. If we haven't, the core of it is this. That's what we need to complete. Everything else falls out from that. So I would suggest, rather than bringing in, NAC's already presented a lot of information. I don't know what they would present that's not redundant at this point, given particularly that we have not reframed any other questions. So I would suggest that the meeting focuses on simply getting ourselves down to the options that we're willing to present, or final options that we're willing to do, and then if we need to schedule an additional meeting, or push it out a week to get the bond information if that's a part of our charge.
Okay, so there will be, as usual, there will be a debrief / support / try to sort through this stuff meeting. This time it will be 11 o'clock, no, 1:30 on Friday afternoon at the school district offices. I'm hearing loud and clear, Bruce, that you would like to focus on these things. Please, everyone, let me know what you need and from whom, or if you know what you need in order to get down to 2 options next time. Tor, did you have another question?
No, I was just gonna say, now I want to kiss Bruce, so that's all.
What, Bruce, what?
Form a line over there.
It's a good thing for you.
Okay, we're over.
Just one thing, and we didn't really ever get to why the numbers were good or bad or whatever in the scoring, but my thought would be, now that we have Dorothy, I don't know if Dorothy was on the team, but there's 2 teams that just did not put any scores on H.
Dorothy was.
Okay, if those people could reform and just answer the questions based on what we're saying now, so that at least we get it in a number that looks like the rest of the numbers, that would be helpful.
Okay, so Michelle, Dorothy, and Steve, are you going to do that? I know another meeting. And what? Oh, yeah, Tor's team put zeros instead of the blank. Okay, you guys willing to do that, Tor?
Well, I am, but Allison headed for the hills.
Allison and Jimmy. So you guys gonna work on Allison? Okay. Okay, good job, you guys. 5's better than 0. You know, 3 hours for me in the last hour.
Pretty rough. Yeah, I just wanted to ask about getting down to 2. Is that the time? When do we get down to 1?
The time after.
Okay.